I'm Scott Dameron. I'm one of the curriculum chairs here. I'm also in the kinesiology department here at BC.
I am Michelle Hart. I am the other faculty co-chair of curriculum. I'm in the education department and primarily on the Delano campus. And just before I forget, we have our camera off only because you can't really see us on the camera. You just see a big room with the four of us sitting here. Erica.
Hi, Erica Giblin, Articulation Officer. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say. That's it, right?
Education department.
Oh, Education Department.
Alrighty. So this is Common Course Numbering Project Phase 2.
So you may or may not have been following this, if you've been hearing about, but last semester we executed phase 1. And so we've left links to these. So if you want to look at them later, we didn't feel we needed to go through all of them. But actually, can you go ahead and click on that link for
This one?
yeah. And then open up one of them. When it clicked away, do we need to reshare? Can you guys see the webpage right now, or do we need
Yes,
to
we
reshare?
can see.
Yes, we can.
So these are what the templates look like. So the initial, there were basically 6, but it ended up being 8 with some of the variations by the time you have a class and the lab version of math and things like that. These are what the templates from phase 1 did. In that initial phase, which they did in the fall, they just took some of the very most populated classes. So it was like English B1A, it was statistics, it was poli-sci, psych B1A, courses like that are, some of the most attended classes at every school. And they took a smaller pool. It was, like I said, it was only 6, but I think it was 8 by the time you include the lab versions of the classes, because they're still working out a lot of the kinks, and they're still working out a lot of the kinks. But so they wanted a limited group that they could get off the ground and have a lot of impact right away, while also while they're working it out, kind of figure this out. And so a lot of these areas relate directly, like when you're looking at this template, that
Sorry.
they correlate to the same areas that we have existing in Illumin already. Just trying to put the link in.
I am. I'm just trying to give you guys the link. My mouse is crazy.
And so it was an adventure for sure for these disciplines that did this past semester. And so we're trying to share some lessons learned while also tell you the things that they're still trying to figure out. The big thing you can, like I said, when you have an existing course and you're trying to submit it for this, and we'll get into what's on the list for this next round. But these areas that we're showing, these are what they call part 1. And this is literally just copy paste. And so when it's showing your course objectives, these are them, and there's no deviation from those. So you're literally just pasting those one by one into your SLO area.
Yeah.
And so when it has methods of evaluation, everything here, there's very little decision making. There was also, does it show the part 2?
Yes.
Yeah, so some areas do have what they call a part 2, and it says optional. We had different departments decide, like most submitted a part 2. There was 1 or 2 classes where they decided not to. Do we have definitive advice?
No, there's no formal advice. There's the AO perspective, which is a shared perspective across the state, which is to use the part 2. to include any information from the course outline of record that's not included in the part one that was determined by the state. And this will help in the submission for CalGETS or articulation agreements, because we don't have any confirmation from the CSU or UCs that they'll accept our course outlines of record based on part one. So the articulation officers across the state advised to use the part two. But other parties have not had a recommendation.
I think there was a balance that everybody was trying to straddle between, adding so much where they felt like you were getting away from what the core of the class was, and so it was something different than this standardized course for common course numbering. But then, like you said, we have all of our, the accreditation agreements, is that the right word? Articulation agreements with all these schools. And so a lot of times there are, you know, if there's elements that's why this school wants to, that's what the school wants to see in the course, so they'll articulate with it and accept it like for like. If they're not present in part one, if you don't demonstrate it in part two, then you could potentially put some of those articulation agreements at risk. And so there was like, how do we kind of straddle the line between those to meet most objectives? Like I said, most of the courses ended up submitting some form of a part two, just to maintain those agreements. Any questions on the template itself?
Nick has a question.
Let's see.
Do we put both SLOs and course objectives in the part one? There is no official guidance from the state on that. BC has decided its own process. Which is.
I know, I feel like we're failing this quiz right now.
So originally we said have it identical, but because they gave us more leniency and said colleges decide for yourselves until the state figures it out. We've moved back to they can be different. And then on our end, as AO, curriculum chairs, curriculum specialists, we'll figure out how to submit it to the state to meet the requirements if you make them different. Until we hear from the state of specific guidance. So you can have them different, you can have them the same, up to you. We'll figure it out, because we don't have guidance from the state.
Okay, this is Nick. Okay, what has to be the same? Are you talking about the SLOs versus the course objectives, or what has to be the same as what's on the template that, you know, at the CCCO chancellor's office?
So part one has to be identical. And every title matches what's in our COR except for the objectives outcomes. You'll see it says objectives / outcomes. So as long as either your objectives or your outcomes are identical to what's on the template, that will get us the check mark green light.
Oh, okay. So we could still, so we have, you know, our course objectives that are different than our SLOs. And that's okay. Okay.
As
Thank you.
long as either the SLOs or the objectives match this identically.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like we should add a huge asterisk to everything that we say today. Because they could send us an email tomorrow and say it's completely different.
Yeah.
And so we'll just kind of keep that at the front of everything.
Yeah, and this was only guidance for phase one, which they've already warned us, phase two will have different guidance. We just don't know what's gonna be different about phase two guidance.
Any questions about the phase one or part one versus part two of the templates?
Yes, 1 + 1.
We're gonna go back to the slide. You want to do the numbering?
Okay, so.
Yeah.
No.
All right, here's the formula that they've given us, and it's
We
even.
can't change this at all.
Yeah, there's no room for deviation. And so you've got the standard four-letter code that needs to be used. That C that's inserted in there is to designate it as a common course. And at least there's more numbers because we even have Saracoso, who already has all their courses that start with C, but at least these can differentiate further because they've got 4 numbers. And so it's the 4-letter subject code, a C, the stats was C1000. And then we have those and signs because they've left space there. We don't really use those except if it's designators, like when we had statistics, there's statistics, and then there's a statistics with an embedded support lab. And so the 2 classes that they approved or that they submitted were, they had a specific prefix for statistics that is called stat. So even though we have math B22, they had to create stat C1000 and then stat C1000L. And so those last 2 ands, like those are only for those, you can see those specific HL, SE, for those kind of identifiers, for variations on specialty versions of courses. But our numbering is limited to those, and the numbering is kind of already determined by what you're going for, so.
So in the example you have on here, it should be geology C1000, not C100. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the determination of the subject is at the state level. We don't get a say in that. So we did have 2 disciplines that had to change their subject. Like Scott referenced, our statistics class in math had to go from a math subject descriptor to stats. And so that was changed. And then communication had to change to communication studies. So still COMM, but they had to change the title of their prefix. So things like that determined at the state level, we have no say.
You can think of it a little bit like in CID as far as what number you're choosing to match to. Like even that one there, like it's actually 1005. Right, and then it's honors, so it's got the H on the end of 1005.
And for phase 1, we weren't allowed to create any courses. And so like right now, BC does not offer honors courses specifically. And so we were not allowed to create honors courses. But we don't know if phase 2 will be able to create them. So we'll get guidance to see if we can create courses or not.
Any questions on this?
And this link here is simply to a program update from the state. So it kind of reviews everything that happened in phase 1. We kind of wanted to give you background on phase 1 before we jumped into phase 2. So this is a list of the disciplines and the CODs being affected by phase 2. We have history, English, economics, art history, biology, chemistry, math, and astronomy. Anthropology, communication, sociology, and child development.
Can you go back to the list?
I can.
Thank you. And so we have all of those. Next one. This one, biology, we have our anatomy and physiology combined. And so this may or may not apply to us. We don't know. We have our lab combined with our biology. Right now they're saying no lab. So if they move how they did for phase 1, we would not be able to submit anything for biology because we don't have any of those types of courses right now. Now, if they allow us to revise or create new ones, then we may be able to submit. Another option is at the state level, they can recognize that lots of colleges do what we do and combine anatomy and physiology, and they might decide 3 isn't enough for biology, we need 5 common course numberings, and they might give us 5 templates. That'll allow for our different options. So we were supposed to find out January 15th, that's today. I don't have an email from them. But as soon as I do, I'll write a summary and share it with curriculum committee. And probably academic senate, depending on who it comes to. Next one, astronomy was another case. Yeah, so astronomy, we don't have astronomy with lab. So unless they decide they're gonna do 2 versions, one with lab, one without lab, we wouldn't qualify for common course numbering in astronomy.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Right.
Yeah, at least for phase 2, depending on what the guidance is, yeah. And then we have all of those.
So like we mentioned before in part 1, it was copy and paste from the provided template. Based on the guidance we've received thus far, as of right now, part 2 is not required when you're filling this out, but encouraged. So if you do have additional information in your course, to include that in part 2. Part of it is because there's different requirements in meeting articulation than there are on the CCN. And so each individual department and faculty, you're going to have to kind of navigate the balance between articulation requirement and CCN requirement. There are instances where you might lose one to gain the other. So just be aware of that as you're revising your courses.
And there were colleges in phase 1 that chose not to submit to common course numbering at all, because they rather keep their articulation agreements. There was only 4. And the chancellor's office is determining how to deal with them. So once they determine how to deal with them, then we'll know the consequences for choosing one over the other.
Something to keep in mind with this, because our course workflows haven't changed. And so luckily, most of these parts match up, but they're still not built to have a part 1 and a part 2. But so that's all they had to do was, if, let's say I'm submitting my course outline, and so I can just literally label the first part, part 1, and I can copy paste everything from the templates outline, course outline, and then if there's supplemental stuff that I want to add because they're an important part of our course and they matter for articulation, like Michelle said, then we would just literally, in that same box for the course outline, we would just label part 2 and then list the accompanying, bullets or whatever for the content that would be in addition to part 1. And so you don't need a separate section for that -2, just so it's clearly labeled part 1 and part 2. We've already added the disclaimer here, and that, like I said, that's one of the biggest challenges in this is guidance changes all the time. And so I guess that's our promise to you, is that we're following what's going on, and everything that we're telling you now could change in a month. And we've just been kind of learning to roll with it and roll with the punches, so to speak. I think we've learned a lot from this first round. Even figuring out some of the part 2 things were some of the biggest questions that faculty had when they were writing things from the first round. And so I don't think all those questions have been asked, but I think there's a lot more clarity than there was 6 months ago. And so if you've got a course in these areas and you're beginning, I would say stay in contact with the curriculum chair, stay in contact with the AO, because we're going to be receiving updates on these things regularly. so we can kind of help you with the process once those formalized templates are out.
And the turnaround time is gonna be really quick. So today was the day I was supposed to receive part of phase 2. We'll see if I get any, or if I get an email saying they'll come later. And we have to have all of these, here's the caveat. Right now, we have to have all of these submitted by September, like through the full curriculum process by September. But that's assuming the UCs accept the transfer agreement, like they did for phase 1. So in phase 1, they said, okay, if your course is already UC transferable, we won't make you resubmit to make sure it stays UC transferable. But that promise is just for phase 1. They haven't made that promise for phase 2. So if we don't get that promise, then that means we have to get all of those through our local curriculum process by April. And there's no guarantee we're gonna get the templates by the end of April. Yeah. So there's that.
So the templates for phase 2 are available to those departments?
No, we don't have them yet.
Yep, okay, I was thinking I didn't hear it right.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because that sounds.
But they're due
crazy,
this
right?
semester.
Right.
Yeah.
As we discuss this, we realize the impossibility of what we're saying is being asked. Or the difficulty of it. So. Are there any questions about that?
How?
Who decides discipline characters? So what happened in early fall, I want to say, the Senate president reached out to each of the disciplines that were selected by the state and requested nominations from each discipline. And then those were run by the curriculum committee and the academic senate. And then those are submitted to the state academic senate, and then they're put into a lottery and just pulled. And those faculty get to decide what goes in the template, what discipline characters are chosen, what numbers are used, whether they're gonna stick to the with lab or add options for without lab, things like that. So that's how they chose the faculty who decided. And then the goal was to have faculty from the UCs and the CSUs work with the community colleges to do that. That did not happen for every course. That was public knowledge, so yeah, we did not have participation from the CSU and UCs for every course. No, we still don't have any kind of formal agreement with CID. So these courses were chosen based on CID, but that doesn't mean they maintain CID. So even for phase 1, we're still waiting word on whether we resubmit for CID, if it's gonna transfer, if it's gonna be automatic approval for CID, or if CID needs to be revised. So we don't know how there's gonna be agreement with CID yet. And you following along, CID determines our ADTs. So we don't know if these common course numbers can qualify for ADTs yet. Or CalGETHE or articulation agreements or anything.
Yeah, thanks. What else do you say?
Any other questions I can give bad news to?
Yeah, I feel like this is the most depressing session ever.
But we want to be as transparent with information that we have.
I think that's the only difference is that you're honestly telling us that it may be for nothing.
But we have to, it's the law. And the chancellor's office does have plans to figure out how to enforce this. We just don't know what that is yet.
So
If nothing else, it's kind of
Friday.
confirmation, right? That you see some of these things or you hear some of these things and you're like, that can't be it. It's crazy. I'm gonna go to a session and find out what's really going on. So at least now you can have confirmation that it's as messed up as you heard.
yeah, and I get the messages and I read them and they don't make sense to me. So that's why I
This
kind
is
of
why-
wanted to come.
This is what, they don't make sense. And then next comment, we don't know what the CCCCO doesn't know. And what's funny to that is the CCO released memos saying, this is what's gonna happen, without ever getting the agreement with the CSU or UCs. And so then the UC and CSU released a memo saying, we never agreed to that, we're not doing that. So that's what's happening also.
Wow. He's wondering. So those in phase two, were they made aware? Like, did like child development, were they made aware that they're in phase two or not necessarily? If they read your
The-
messages?
The Senate president and the articulation officer reached out to the department chair and dean over each of the discipline departments.
Okay,
And if they had a curriculum representative, that person is.
since everything was falling through, I'll make sure they know tomorrow. We have a meeting.
And then it was put on reports at the curriculum committee and Senate. So it was posted.
Okay. I just don't know if there's an individual, so.
Yeah.
Any questions? We can say we don't know the answer to?
Uh-huh.
Yes, Nick.
Really interesting.
Well, this is helpful. It at least lets us know what's going on.
Right.
And we're gonna be in phase three soon enough, so we should be aware.
So the question Jenna had, are some CTE courses going to be included at any time? So child development is a CTE course, so that's one example of CTE being included. Their focus is only on transfer courses and courses that are included in ADTs. So unless the CTE is also an ADT, probably not at this time. Child development being an exception, I think we have like criminal justice, another exception. Nutrition. And so phase two had about 20 courses. They're expecting 30+ templates to come from that. Phase three is supposed to have 50 courses, so they're expecting 70+ templates. And of course, we have about 2 or 3 months to process all of that through curriculum. And not sure if it's on anybody's radar, but once we change the course number to the common course numbering, that means any degree or certificate that has that as a required or optional class has to go through a revision as well.
At that same timeline? Or would? it be-
Very shortly after, like 2 weeks.
Okay,
It's one thing, I think that the hardest part of that is like, let's say you're a nutrition class, right? And so you're like, well, it's in this degree, but it's also in this local degree. But then there may be other degrees not in your department that have it, like those are the harder ones to keep track of.
oh,
Cause it's not just yours. You know, like, I mean, if
There's a
you had,
lot.
like, if you had statistics and they had to change anything now that has statistics in
Math
their
going to-
ADT
I have it.
would have to change.
Or the AO took her.
But
Oh.
for an
that's-
example of something that would be in
That's
everything, right?
hilarious.
Yeah,
And so this summer, the Senate president, curriculum chairs and AO have to certify that we did all of this cleanup work. And so that's why you get lots of emails from us about, make sure you're submitting, make sure you're submitting, make sure you're submitting. Because they're relying on self-certification to ensure that we change the numbers and that all the ADTs that have those numbers have been changed as well. So we expect that to continue for phase 2 and 3, where we'll have to recertify each year. Lots of courses, lots of revisions coming up. And then by year 4 of this, to kind of come back to Jana's question, they anticipate it'll come to non-ADTs as well. But we don't have any kind of phase 4 idea yet, like official. Yes, there is an Illumin impact report. However, it's not 100% reliable because it depends on the semester starts and the proposed semesters and the course titles. And so there are possibilities of things getting left off. But for the most part, that's a good starting point.
I'm assuming you're gonna see a lot of duplicates, right? Of the same program,
Yeah, same
Curriculum
program
will
being
just get-
revised over and over and over.
so it should be pretty fast once you see it for the fifth
After
time.
this first round, I'm anticipating it be faster.
Yeah,
So just for context, we had about half of our ADTs that needed a full revision, instead of a quick, just change the numbers revision, which was unfortunate. But now that all of our ADTs will be fully revised this round, I'm anticipating all, if maybe save for a couple, we'll be able to quick, just number change, move it through the process after this. But this round, it was more time consuming, because not every ADT was in compliance.
this is crazy.
Yeah.
And then it comes to Senate. If we get these messages from you that, oh, the templates are available, then it'll be connected to that email, or should we contact curriculum when the templates are available? How does that roll out?
The AO will work with the curriculum co-chairs to message departments specifically when the template. And if there's any changes to process, that messaging will come from us. But anything curriculum specific will come from us.
Okay.
And then, yeah, keeping the timelines.
Yeah, and always if you guys have, anybody on here, if you have a course that's affected, we always encourage, like, when you say, okay, we finally have the templates that we can get to work. We always encourage reaching out to the co-chairs at the beginning of the process. Just that we can help make sure you're going in the right direction, just because you're already under such a time crunch. So any little things that make it get sent back more frequently just draws out that process. So anything we can do to help you save sendbacks and get it to the finish line quicker, we're happy to help with, especially at the beginning of the process.
There is each college was allotted some funding in order to ensure the CID process or the CCN process was complete within this 3-4 year timeline that they've created. And so some of that money is going to be used for, special comps, things like that. So that we've been working on that. More of the money will be used to like streamline the back end process of connecting it in Banner, connecting it in Starfish, connecting it to Illumin, lots of technology stuff that needs to be connected to. Any other questions, comments, ideas?
All right, great. Well, we really appreciate you guys taking the time. I know there's a lot going on this week, and so we appreciate you guys taking a minute. And just know that we're here to help you get it done. So hopefully we'll all talk soon.
Hey, can I ask a quick question about a different topic?
Sure.
I heard that Spanish 1 and 2 are no longer going to be accepted for transfer for the GE, the IGETC, and the whatchamacallit.
Algetsi?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
So, okay, that's true. So does that mean that the prerequisites is going to go away anytime soon, or not even?
So if, I would advise not removing any prerequisite because then it would no longer qualify you for the ADT,
That's
which
true.
would mean we would not be able to offer a degree in Spanish.
Yeah, I just remember that originally it was because we had that odd student that would go off to a UC. And that's the reason we were given why we needed to have a prerequisite. And then the CID adopted and refused to get rid of their
And so now that
Yep.
CID has the prerequisite requirement, we're bound to it if we want to
We're-
keep degree option.
The word is screwed, but that's okay.
And so,
Okay,
Spanish B2 was submitted for Cal Getsy, to see if we can get it approved. We'll know in May
Okay.
to see if it was approved. And then Spanish B1, unfortunately, along with ASL B1, any first semester foreign language course will not qualify for Cal Getsy at this point. But second semester may, so that's why we resubmitted Spanish B2.
okay, but if it's already, do we get grandfathered in until we have to resubmit or?
So we are not able to be grandfathered in because back in 2023, they were denied.
Oh,
And the
wow, okay.
departments, yeah, the departments were made aware, the department chair and dean were made aware of those denials.
Yeah, I think it was having to do with culture or something like that, not enough culture. I don't
And
know. Anyway,
got denied back in 2023, we're ineligible to be grandfathered in.
yeah, which is funny because the Cal State and UC systems, they don't have prerequisites on any of their lower division Spanish classes.
Different
But
requirements
just-
for the three systems.
Yeah, I'm not great. So we have to abide by their system, but they don't know anyway. Anyway, I'm
Too
done.
much logic, too much logic, it's gotta stop.
Yeah, full stop. Appreciate it. Thanks for you guys' work.
Like we've done nothing but bring bad news today.
I know, constantly, right?
Any other questions? All right, then we'll say thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys making time during this weekend. Wish you all luck as we get back to school next week. Thank you.